Hey, this is Shaun with the Atlanta Tennis Podcast, powered by Go Tennis. Check out our calendar of Metro Atlanta tennis events at letsgotennis.com. And if you're a fan of Bull Shark Sports, go to shop.letsgotennis.com and get yourself a hoodie or a hat. Also, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story on the Atlanta Tennis Podcast. So if you have a story to tell, something fun happened on the court. My exciting story is I hit a tweener in the city finals match. It was amazing. And yeah, we lost the match. So that's part of the fun of the story. But if you've got a story, we want to hear about it. Something fun, something crazy, whatever it is, go to letsgotennis.com/my story. And you might have your story shared on our podcast for all of Atlanta to enjoy. Today, this is Youth Sports Talk with Coach Ben Hestley. Today, we are discussing how much the coach matters. That is what we're talking about today. The coach matters. And my point of view is loving the kids is more important than anything technical or strategic. Ben, you ready to talk youth sports?
Let's rock and roll.
All right. Today's conversation focuses on the coach of a team or an athlete, their coaching style maybe, and what the real purpose of their coaching is. Are they the my way is the highway type, or a more democratic coach, allowing players to feel part of the decision-making process? I think, Ben, you used the phrase the ownership of their own development. And or are they, first and foremost, are they focused on winning, technique, strategy, stuff like that? Or what many parents would prefer, building good character and good sportsmanship? So, Ben, where do you want to start?
Let's start what you mentioned, Shaun, about the person. The person is more valuable than the athlete, and focusing on that first. I think there's a great quote. It's been around for years, and I use it a lot. That players, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Oh, that's sweet. I like it. It sounds cheesy. It's like a bumper sticker, right? But
Right.
it's real. It's true.
So yeah, and so let's add on to that bumper sticker, right? True character, true culture is not just a bumper sticker. We know a lot of companies that have great taglines, and you go work for this company, and the first sort of your onboarding process, if you will, as an employee, is you have to go sit through some seminar that talks about employee morale and culture. And then what happens like 5 minutes afterwards? Everybody starts talking about what a cheese ball the dude
Not
was
that, right?
that was running the thing, and it goes out the window, right? It's done. Like it's on paper, but it's not real. And so culture is something that you have to. It has to be lived. It has to be breathed. It has to be done on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and I want to consider three examples. We kind of have the beginner, the intermediate, and the advanced that we often talk about, even different focuses on this conversation or in this show, in this series specifically. But in the beginning level, I think it's 100% do you love the kids? So when we hire coaches at Tennis for Children, we all honestly don't care. Some of our best coaches don't even play tennis, because getting a kid into enjoying tennis is, are they having a great time on a tennis court? It really doesn't matter if they've got their continental grip perfected on their drop volley. They're not talking about that yet. So it's how much does that coach love the kids? At an intermediate level, it changes a little bit, doesn't it, Ben?
I don't think so. I mean, I think if you have obviously as a coach, you have to be knowledgeable of the sport. You have to have technical knowledge to some degree of, some of the, in tennis, we use technique. In baseball, you might use mechanics or something like that. Like more of the, how do you hit a forehand,
The
or
fundamentals.
what's the mechanical checkpoints of swinging a bat, to hit a baseball or a softball, like those sorts of things. You also need to be well versed in the strategies of the game, right? Of the sport. But it still goes back to how you're coaching, and still goes back to, are you relating to the kids that you're coaching, right? And are they buying into what you're coaching? And we do this when I run USPTA workshops, and the reason I land on it doesn't change. Obviously the knowledge, if you're a college baseball coach, your knowledge of baseball is probably much higher than a youth league coach, for the most part, right? It doesn't always happen that way. But I think about when I run USPTA workshops, and one of the first thing we do, and these are workshops for coaches that are going to be certified. So a lot of these uh, candidates, all these adults that are looking to get certified, they already played tennis. They played college tennis. They played high school tennis. They played high level tennis for the most part. And so we asked them, think about the best coach that you ever had, and give us one definition or one trait of that coach that makes you think of them when you think of why they were your favorite coach. And it all goes.
Do I get to answer that question?
Yeah, go ahead. Think of the best. Give me give me one word to describe the best coach you ever had, or one phrase.
One phrase. My father defined it. I'm not good at short answers. He said Fred Bushmeyer was a phenomenal first coach because he had the biggest smile on his face the entire lesson. And he was just hitting balls to you. It didn't matter if you made it or missed it. Big old smile working with a 9-year-old kid. That's how I remember it. And that's one of the reasons I love tennis.
So he would say he was engaging, he was fun, probably, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
and so
just that smile.
I mean, and
Happy.
that's where most coaches talk about. They talk about how enthusiastic the coach was, how encouraging he or she was. How they may say something more growth mindset, like they challenged me, or things like that. But they never, or I shouldn't say never, they hardly ever say like, this coach helped me with an amazing topspin forehand, or this coach was awesome at teaching me how to throw a curveball. It's about more the character piece, right? And the culture. It's about like they were a good person. They were a good friend, that they were there for me when I needed them, or they were encouraging, they challenged me, they were enthusiastic, they made learning fun. Like those sorts of things is what the coaches always say when they think about their best coach, not so much about the technical or tactical aspects of the sport.
And so at that intermediate level, we get into a little more technical, maybe a lot more technical, but the love of the kids still has to be there, the love of the student. And the character building still filters through as well, because the first thing, kid comes in all crazy and being ridiculous, the first thing a coach got to do is say, come here. You can get in line. Let's talk. Sit down. Here's the structure, and here's how we're going to treat each other. And we add in the respect word and all those things that you want to have as part of your culture. That's going to permeate up into even the advanced levels. So now we go into the advanced level, and yes, you've got to have the technical information, but how does that adjust a little bit? It isn't. I don't see a lot of Bobby Knights out there with big smiles on their faces, and I use that example specifically because at some point it becomes a completely different kind of coach that needs to get more out of the athlete. Is that a decent way to put it?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I mean, look, you can coach hard, right? You can coach hard. You can be on your players in a respectful way. That doesn't mean we all have to be softies and like, oh, that's okay, But there's a way to do that, and there's a way to push your players and convince them that hey, you can go for more, right? You can do one more rep. Hey, give me one more ball. Do this again, right? Those sorts of things. And I think a lot of kids, especially the advanced level, that they want that. You know, I think a lot of it too, as you get to advanced levels, is starting to let go a little bit, and things should be more player led. Like the warm up, for example, right? Now, when you in a beginner to intermediate level, the kids come in, the coach is going to do a warm up. It's mostly a coach led warm up, right? Do these exercises, do these activities, whatever. When you're at the advanced levels, you should be able to run that warm up yourself. Now that doesn't mean coach is not there and coach is not paying attention, but the kids should be able to, hey, we can go through this warm up and do it ourselves because we know how to do it and we're responsible enough. And like you said, about the ownership. I take enough responsibility for my development that I can go through a warm up and prepare myself for play, whether that be practice or a game. And I tell kids all the time. I had a conversation with my team last night that one of the main reasons that I'm such a stickler for these players going through a dynamic warm up and the physical skills activities is to teach them at 10, 12, 14 years old how to prepare for practices and games, you know? And it's not like when you're 6, it's different. You go out there and hey, let's play tag to get going, you know? Um, and it's a little it's still structured, but it's a little bit looser. It is geared more to like, and I always hate to use fun and learning as two separate entities. I think they can go and they should go together, but it's a little bit more buttoned up when you're older. And just teaching them at those older ages, double digit ages, of how to prepare for a practice, for a lesson, for a game, is going to pay off for them down the road.
So as the kids, as the player, even if it's just an adult player getting better, we can hand over more and more responsibility to their own development as a coach. But how do you see that in a coach? If we're talking to a parent now and say, hey, parent, you need to really vet your coaches these days. This is just how today is. And we're all safe play. So is it certified, safe play certified, and certified with our
They play
coaching
approved. You're not really certified, but yeah,
approved
safe, background
approved
checks, safe
background
play
checks, things like
approved.
that. Those things matter. And there are a lot of coaches out there that aren't, and they may be perfectly fine coaches.
Yeah.
However, you're taking a chance there. But in this case, if we're just looking at the soccer coach for my 12-year-old, and it's kind of a club team and they're just playing some soccer and nobody's taking it all that seriously, that coach really is going to matter. I've left multiple soccer teams as a young player because the coach wasn't right. I just couldn't, it wasn't a good fit. We weren't going to get along well. But in that case, we start handing over as a coach the responsibility to the kids. The kids should be able to come in and get themselves warmed up at some point in that development. But as a parent, how do I see that in the coach? How do I know what to look for is maybe the right question to know if that coach is in the right place. If you've got a Bobby Knight smashing chairs to get people motivated, get the players motivated, you don't want him in your preschool, right?
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean you don't,
Obviously. So
but
use
you
an
don't,
extreme example.
right. I mean, but can you yell at a kid? You can yell at a kid. Sometimes you have to yell at a kid to get their attention. I mean, they're so focused, like a hyper focus on something. And it's,
Jimmy, get over here.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I'll yell at the kid, and he'll turn around and the mom will like freak out. I'm like, I'm just trying. I mean, that's how he gets attention. I'm like, hey, just come over here and join us. Okay.
Right.
Because he's fixated on the bird that's over there,
They're distracted by the butterfly.
you
Exactly.
know, I mean, he's not, I'll never forget. I had this one player who was a very good tennis player, and he was very highly ranked in the state in the section. And we're at a tennis tournament, and there's a rain delay. So he's playing middle, first set, it gets rained, right? It's like whatever, 3-all, 4-all in the first set of this tournament. And it's not a big tournament, it's just a local Atlanta tournament. And his dad, I'm just kind of hanging out, and his dad's there. And his dad wants to coach him up, right? It's a great opportunity to coach him up, right? So he's coaching him up. He's like, okay, here you go. All right, here's what I noticed in the first 6 games, and blah, blah. And the kid's just kind of like, he's kind of like, and then his dad's like, his dad's like, do you get it? You know what I'm talking about, right? And the kid's like, oh, look, a cat. And like I'll never forget that. And so from then on, we're like, Ken, look, is there a cat there? And he's like, yeah, there's a cat. And it was the funniest, and everybody just busts out laughing because we're like, this kid's 10 years old, and that's what 10-year-olds do. What might have been better is for him to just give him 1 or 2 tips if you want, but like he didn't need a whole dissertation on, play by play, if you will, of the first 6 games of the match.
Yeah, probably the wrong time for that. When he's 15 playing in the Orange Bowl, maybe you sit back and do a reevaluation and look through the statistics and get ready to come out strong when it really matters. When
Yeah.
when you're 10, You know what? Yeah, I got a break. I don't have to play right now. Sweet. What else can I do? I got any
Yeah, yeah,
friends
yeah.
here?
Right.
Still finding ways to enjoy it. Okay, so a parent needs to pay attention in those ways. Sometimes being a coach, which is fun too, that parent coach relationship, which we've also talked about before. But in that case, if I'm looking at the coach, you being there, you're just hanging out. Then does the parent go home to his wife? In your example, he's like, "Yeah, Coach Ben was there. He didn't say anything. Didn't try to help him. Didn't try to get him ready for the going back in because they may not understand that the kid probably was just going to be perfectly happy taking a break, and maybe 5 minutes before they go back on court, you get the kid on a jump rope and start talking about what their plan is."
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I tell rest is super important. As a coach, knowing what not to say is just as important often, and sometimes more important as what knowing what to say, right? And sometimes, and I mentioned this before on our shows, we talk too much as coaches, and we want to fix everything. And I see this a lot with volunteer coaches, where first of all, everything is like way too highly technically focused, right? It's like
Trying to show what they know.
I've got so much knowledge about how to hit a baseball, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
shove it down your throat, you know? And it's like, or I'm just an absolute whiz at the serve. I'm just a master of serve. I have studied every biomechanical checkpoint of every major ATP Tour player, and I know exactly how the serve should look. And
I think I've met
I'm
that
just
guy.
gonna ram that at your 8-year-old until they get it. And it doesn't work, right?
No.
And first of all, the kid's he's mentally screwed up, right? Because he or she can't focus on that. And so sometimes two things I'll mention is like of being more player centered is give them a specific task to focus on. Like I'll tell a kid in the batting cage, I'll say, hey, just hit line drives.
One thing.
Like, don't let the ball hit the ground. Like, okay. And they'll hit 5 or 6 grounders, and and then they'll sort of self-organize, a term we use now, self-organize. And then a lot of people who don't believe in that are like, oh, it's just like set it and forget it. Like they're just like, it's like when the play-based approach to tennis came out, and traditional coaches were like, well, they just want to roll the balls out and play, not work. And like, it's not really that. It's guided, and the USPTA for a long time has had the phrase guided discovery. And that's what we're doing. We're, as coaches, we're guiding our players. We're moving them in the direction that we feel will help them. And that often means just shutting your mouth and letting things play out and be willing for them to make mistakes.
You don't
You
have to
know,
correct every swing. Yeah.
yeah, it's too
Because they're
much,
not going to
right?
fix it each time. It's going to take a
It's too
thousand
much.
swings for them to
You know,
figure it out. Yeah.
and let it sometimes, like, you come to my tennis classes and see like 7, 8-year-olds learning how to rally on a red ball court. It looks chaotic, you know? But let it be ugly. Like I learned that from John O'Sullivan, who was he runs a organization called Changing the Game Project. He used to be the soccer coach at Vermont. And that's his big thing, is like, let it be ugly. Like sometimes we want these practices that are like perfectly orchestrated and like we're not coaches, we're like choreographers, right? Like, look at this drill. I've got this amazing drill. And these kids look so amazing. And I tell the kids all the time, and my fellow coaches, if they're doing the drill correctly, like Elmo,
Move
that's
on.
man. Enough,
Move on.
let's move on. Like it's too
Yeah.
easy, right? They're
Yeah.
actually not getting better, you know. They're just
Let it be ugly. I
they're
like that a lot.
staying where they are. Okay.
Yeah.
So don't talk as much. Give outcomes versus so much internal, like mechanical cues. Not that mechanical cues are bad all the time, but like just simply say something like, I mean, like if I'm in the batting cage, another thing I'll do, I'll say hit the ball, because I'm usually pitching, right?
Mhm.
Hit the ball right over my head. Hit the ball over my head. Or in tennis, like get the ball over the net. If you get the ball over, if you got like an orange or green ball kid, if they just get the ball over the net, there's a pretty good chance it's going to land inside the blue space, the court,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Getting it over the net can often be the challenge. So just simple stuff like that. And then allowing them to make mistakes, right? I think sometimes, and that comes from safe, right? The inherent thing of parenting, of coaching. A lot of us as coaches, we're parents, especially in an environment like recreational soccer you mentioned, or rec baseball, rec softball, where you've got volunteer coaches who are the parents. And our innate parenting feeling is safety. We want our kids to be safe, right? Number one, we want to be safe. And the easiest way for them to be safe is not create any kind of conflicts or struggles for them, right? And so while we know that struggles are good because they're growth opportunities, we often we have to be safe. And in order to be safe, then there's no wiggle room for failure. And as soon as there's a sign of failure, we need to jump in and fix that situation. We need the lawnmower parent, right? Our intentions are good, but sometimes we want to plow right over that thing and not allow the kid to work through it.
And I think that's true of every level. I think that allowing those mistakes, whatever level the mistake is, whatever level the player is, whatever level of coaching that you're coaching, I won't say whatever level the coach is, because that may or may not be a thing. But in that case, you're allowing them to make those mistakes because you're allowing them to fail and get back up again, which is a character trait, which is something we want in our children beyond whether or not they've got a good forehand. I mean, yes, it's important. They need a good forehand, don't get me wrong. But being a good person, probably more important than that. And I would guess a lot of parents would prefer at the end of the day, I don't really use that phrase very often. At the end of the day, I think they would look back on their own childhood, and often their favorite coach or their favorite teacher is the one that helped them personally in a way, rather than just said, oh, he taught me that math thing that I really didn't understand. And maybe in a similar scenario from a learning point of view, the character and how to treat people is going to be more important, and the coach allowing those things to happen. And maybe it's allowing it at the higher levels, interacting a little bit in the intermediate levels, and really driving it in the lower levels in the beginning times to say, hey, little Johnny, you don't treat people that way. Mm-hmm. And being able to be stronger about it, not hammering it in, obviously, but we do want to put it there. So in that case, Ben, did we answer the question? The coach matters, and it sounds like we were a little bit all over the place on the coach matters in, I don't know, 8 or 10 different ways rather than just the 2 I introduced with.
Yeah, the coach does matter, and sometimes, unfortunately, in a rec setting where you have your team is selected, you just hey, here, this is the 10U coach for your team. Like, you don't really have a choice. This is the coach. But I think for parents, for coaches, things to look for is, I think somebody who, you can be, you can be challenging. You can encourage kids. And I think also is somebody who, like, sets that tone, right? Like, sets that structure with the kid, right? Creates creates the, like you just mentioned about, hey man, we treat people nicely here. That's not nice, you know? And so I think that the character is something you got to do consistently and start from an early age. And kids actually want that. They want structure. They want to do the right things. And the coach just, can create that for them.
I love it. Ben Hestley, Youth Sports Talk. I appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Have a good day, everybody.